and every one of you are here for a reason. This is actual grassroots lobbying at its best. Every corner of the country, from Washington State to California, we've got folks from Massachusetts. This is the most antagonistic, anti-GLBT, anti-progressive, anti-everyday middle American government that we have ever had in our history. And that's something that is really, actually very, very deeply impacting the community. The reason that we are up here is to make the best use of our time. And the reason that we all came up here is to do what we can to convince the gatekeepers, the folks that hold the keys to our rights, to our equality, to our being just typical citizens. The fact is, if you've got people dying out there, there is no excuse for targeting any group for any reason. We're seeing a lot of the same old rhetoric, blaming the victim. Within the trans community, I don't need to tell you, jobs are still the number one issue. Remember this, and this was something that I wish I would have remembered. You're a citizen lobbyist. So not everything's going to work nice and smooth. It won't be easy, but we can make those little differences. The only thing I can promise you is this. The minute we give up, that's the minute they are guaranteed a victory.
I thought since we're all technically working together, we haven't all met each other, I thought first we just go around the room and all just introduce ourselves and just where you're from. So I'm just start. I'm Marissa Richmond from Nashville.
I'm Vanessa Edwards Foster, also from Houston, and I'm the chair of INTAC.
My name is Sylvia Hurst. I'm from Stockton, California.
I'm Robin Walters from Port Ludlow, Washington. I am the secretary, media director, and chief cook and bottle washer, whatever Ness wants me to do. And I'm also the wife of V. Emery.
I'm Barbara Casbar, and I'm from Jersey.
Michael Woodward from Tucson, Arizona.
Karen Gershik, also from Tucson, Arizona, representing Southern Arizona Gender Alliance.
Deja vu from Connecticut. Go Huskies.
As you can see, we got a wide range of people from all across the country, and that's good. Of course, I've already emailed you, and I hope everybody brought it with you, the information about your representatives, but I'm also now going to hand out the information that includes office assignment or office numbers for your senators, as well as the actual sheets that you'll be filling out, so I'll pass those out now. I have them organized by state. So first, Arizona, back to California. Now, we're focusing on 3 pieces of legislation. And again, I sent you the email about those 3 pieces, but we can talk about those in greater detail now. The first one is the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, also known as ENDA. ENDA is in the Senate, sponsored by, the chief sponsor is Senator Kennedy of Massachusetts, and it's got 43 co-sponsors. Again, if I listed your senator as a co-sponsor, you have that on your sheets. If it's left blank, that means they're not a co-sponsor, probably not a supporter. The Senate did vote on ENDA in 1996. It lost 49 to 51. If your senator cast a vote at that time, we have that vote. A yes is a good, a no is a bad. We want language covering gender identity, and we want them to vote yes. The second bill is the Local Law Enforcement Enhancement Act, LLEEA. This is formally known as the Hate Crimes Prevention Act. The last one, of course, is the infamous Federal Marriage Amendment. We don't want this one to pass. We think this is dangerous. It's no secret that there are same-sex marriages involving transgender people across this country, and we're worried that those marriages, those relationships could be affected. Our focus is primarily on ENDA and LLEEA because we want to fight for something, not against something. We're there pushing for something positive, for equal rights and equal treatment. We're looking for members of the Judiciary Committee. That's the committee that has the Local Law Enforcement Enhancement Act and the Federal Marriage Amendment. Or the Health Committee, that's the one that has ENDA. On the House side, we're looking also at Judiciary. They've got LLEEA and FMA. Or I listed there if your member is on the Employer-Employee Relations Subcommittee. That's where INDA is stuck at the present time and unfortunately doesn't seem to be moving. We want activist judges. They've been a real benefit to this community and to many of these civil rights struggles over the last 50 years. By the way, May 17th, when the Massachusetts court case takes effect, is also the 50th anniversary of the Brown decision, which for those who are legal historians, that is truly the moment when the Supreme Court really began to push social progress in this country. And I think it's interesting that the Massachusetts Supreme Court chose May 17th to begin same-sex marriage in that state, and I applaud them for picking that date. Some of you may well be the first openly trans person they've ever met. Yesterday morning, I went to a breakfast with my two senators, and I walked right up to Bill Frist, the majority leader, and said, "Hi!" And got right in his face, and he's like, "Oh."
Most of the people we cannot get appointments with tend to be the people who are not really very favorable to our issues. But that's not always the case. There's some really wonderful, progressive, LGBT-friendly people like Senator Kennedy who we just haven't been able to nail down the appointments yet.
We do want you to fill these sheets out as completely as possible. This is what we need to get back so that we can enter this in our database so we can start tracking what they say, how they feel on the issues. Are they supportive? Are they fence-sitters? Are they downright opponents? We need to know that.
Is that something we should be filling out or even writing on while we're talking?
No. Don't write anything while you're there. We at least need to be able to track where this is going, who we've talked to, who we've made contact with. If you do talk to them and you can get a long meeting and get feedback one way or another, again, we need to get that information back from you. And this is how we're tracking things. And so that's how we know what's going to be happening. And in future years, and this is not just a one-year thing, this is an ongoing thing, and it may be going on for quite a while, this is how we can see what sort of progress we're making over the course of the next year or decade or century, as the case might be.
All we're asking is the opportunity to be productive tax-paying citizens rather than winding up on welfare or homeless or being a prostitute to make a living. And this is a strong thing with the Republicans. You know, the welfare aspect of things. Would you rather these people be productive taxpayers, or would you rather they be on welfare or out on the street, being a prostitute?
We just don't want to be in the streets.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to be on the public dole, and if we're not able to earn a legitimate income, then what are we left to earn? An illegitimate income? We want explicit language, including gender identity or expression, and then passage of the bill. That's exactly what we're seeking to achieve, and that's exactly what we should be asking for. The Lawrence versus Texas decision last year, which, for those of you who may not quite know exactly what that is, that was a ruling in the Supreme Court on the sodomy issue in the state of Texas, in Houston, that basically went all the way to the Supreme Court. They found that to be unconstitutional. But what happened afterwards is something that we've noted in a number of different locales and even nationally, as it states here, that after something very high visibility or high profile occurs within the GLBT community, there also happens to be a bit of a backlash on our community. And indeed, they did a study for the first half of the year versus the second half of the year. The pre-Lawrence versus Texas ruling versus the post-Lawrence versus Texas ruling, and showed the incidences of violence in Chicago, Columbus, New York, Connecticut, San Francisco, and in Colorado. And if you'll notice, every one of them had an increase in the violence. In fact, some of them were as high as Connecticut's increased 450%. Colorado and Columbus, Ohio both increased by over 100%. These are things that we can point out to show that there is indeed a need for pressing forward. We have pretty high-profile stuff that's going on right now with the marriage issue. And in fact, I predict after this May 17th date, when we actually start having the first same-sex marriages, we're probably going to see a spike in the physical violence towards the community. It happens virtually every time. And it's sad, but unfortunately, I guess, there are portions of the community, or portions of society, I should say, that feel, I guess, threatened in some fashion. And this is their way of lashing out. This is their way of kind of pushing back. Unfortunately, they typically react physically. And These are some of the things that we can point out to that we're concerned about right now. This is the here and now.
You all play basketball? You all ever play basketball? Tennis. I got thrown out of the ladies' locker room.
They went over to another hotel and picked up someone else. So. Anyway, alrighty. We ready? Yes. Okay, have we got our tickets and everything? Is everyone ready to go?
Some have,
Oh.
not everybody.
Oh, not everybody? Okay. Let's get a move on.
On Plaza. Then we can get on the blue line that'll take us right to Capitol South.
Okay, do you have an appointment in the house first?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the only appointment
Yeah.
I've got.
Okay, well, I'll mention that once I get upstairs, okay? So we will be getting off on the red line. Anyone going to the Senate side first, get off at Gallery Place, Chinatown, using the red line. 2 stops. 2 stops.
Okay, so let's go to the Russell Building, room 241.
Hey, where are these other ones? This one's Hart, right?
Senate Hart 306. You want to do that one first?
Doesn't really matter. I mean, Lugar's a Republican too, but he's a little more friendly.
Well, we're in the Hart Building.
Okay. Okay. So, 306.
We're just hoping that the senator can sign on board to these.
Okay.
And that he might embrace gender expression as being included into these two.
And we
items.
appreciate that. And we've talked to Human Rights Campaign in particular about, in particular, the ENDA issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of work has gone into that. Senator Lugar has not co-sponsored that issue, that legislation as of yet, because he's worried about some of the possible litigation effects and how he thinks that some of the bigger effects would be for right now. It's not that he's against the proposal. He's worried that creating an environment where you have to take into account someone's sexual orientation on the one hand in hiring, on the other hand, you're not supposed to know about, you don't want to know someone's sexual orientation, could lead to litigation and create confusion.
With the law for gay marriage coming about in Massachusetts, where gay marriage becomes legal, that again there'll be a backlash. And if there is this hate crimes thing that includes gender expression and everything component to it, then there's more at risk for people that are perpetrators of these crimes. And it puts a little bit more weight, more severity to the nature of these crimes.
Senator Lugar has always felt that it is important that people not be harmed or injured for living their lives.
Basically, what we're pressing is not sexual preference. We're pressing gender identity
Two separate
or
issues.
expression. So how a person chooses to express themselves. We support the blurring of gender, not the strict binary male or female expression of it. Just the whole concept of being gender queer is what we're striving for.
And sexual orientation, of course, is the gender to which you are attracted romantically.
Right.
Gender identity and expression is who you are. You know, I am transsexual. I'm also heterosexual because I date women. In my past life, I was a lesbian because I dated women.
And this is something, again, that's come up several times in our conversations with the Human Rights Campaign, is we ask them about some of the legal questions because they're on the forefront of these issues. They're the largest organization that represents transgender people.
Yes.
What is is there a legal definition of transgendered person yet?
No.
No?
There's a broad spectrum of what transgender is that we embrace in our community. Me, it's about my true spirit. It's about the inner me. It's not about, what is in my pants or what gender I am physically. It's what my spirit tells me I am. It's what I feel inside. Some of the SRS surgeries, sexual reassignment surgeries that remake the physical body to fit the gender identity are very expensive, and a lot of people are just excluded from being able to afford that.
Mm-hmm.
And that shouldn't exclude them from being who they feel they are inside. We want to be viable, productive, protected, contributing members of society. We want to move around and function just like everybody else.
There's over a 50% unemployment rate in the transgender community.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because people don't understand, or they have their prejudices, and it's very difficult to transition on the job. A lot of people end up losing their job, and as a result they lose their families. The other thing I wanted to find out is I'm not familiar with Senator Lugar's position on the Federal Marriage Act, or the FMA.
He's an old school conservative in the sense that he strongly believes that the 9th and 10th Amendments actually mean something. It's just that people tend to forget that these days.
Well, we encourage him not to support it.
I think it was the first time that they'd spoken to an actual transgender person representing transgendered issues from their perspective. They've had contact with our issues from like the Human Rights Campaign, which is very noble, and we support them wholeheartedly. But he was able to ask us direct questions that were directly pertinent to us that no one but someone who actually lived the experience would have appropriate answers to. And I think we enlightened him greatly.
It's a very heavy Republican conservative state, heart of the Bible Belt.
Yeah, we have a history of religious fundamentalism that is probably deeper than a lot of other countries. But I think the main problem, though, is over the past 50 years that religious faction has broken out of the religious bounds, has become political. They've started to do things like buy up radio stations and various media. They've started to do other things like run their own candidates. So you have a religious right that is producing information. I think the gay marriage issue being used by the religious right and the Republicans is diversionary tactic. It's very easy. It's always easy to get people to react to fear, especially here in the United States, where we have sort of a culture of fear. So I think the religious right and the Republican Party have picked up on that, and they know that when they're in trouble talking about issues like the economy or the failing war in Iraq, it's very easy for them to scapegoat someone, because they know there's a certain faction of the American people who are very quick to buy into their own fears, as long as they have a focus to put that. So the religious right says the reason things are bad for you, the reason your family's not doing too well and they're struggling, it has nothing to do with the fact that you can't make ends meet, that healthcare costs in prison are tripled over the past couple of years, that you're worried for your job. It has to do with the fact that your marriage is being threatened by the two gay guys down the street. People want to blame someone, and we're an easy target.
Specific to the transgender community, there's a different attitude towards sexuality in Europe and in other parts of the world than there is in the United States. And it's hard to say exactly why that happens, but when you go to Europe or when you go to other places and talk about sexuality, it's more open, it's more on the table. People aren't afraid to discuss it as much as they are here in the United States.
We met with a number of the staffers on the Kerry campaign, as well as a number of the other members of transgender leadership, as well as the Democratic National Committee and Democratic leadership as well. And my impression of how it went, so. There were some things I kind of cued in on, just some nuanced answers, and those always kind of set me a little bit on edge.
I kind of feel like this meeting was an example of political novice, being political novices. Like, the transgender community hasn't had, I suppose, as many years being involved in politics as the gay, lesbian, bisexual community has. So they kind of got hoodwinked, I think, in this meeting, because the other side was prepared to offer us something that they had to offer us, which is a transgendered person on their own LGBT steering committee. but it makes you sort of wonder. I mean, it's an LGBT steering committee. So the expectation is that there would be somebody transgendered on the steering committee. Not that that's throwing us a bone or giving us something, but that gives them something. It would have been a slight had they not put a transgendered person on the committee. And I really don't feel like they addressed the core issue, which is the fact that the campaign has done very little to identify the transgender community as its own identity. They were more prepared to make us feel involved when in reality walked out with very little.
Thank you.
I honestly wasn't expecting more. I was hoping for more. But I can't say I'm surprised, because right now, given how critical this election is, I think that they're playing it ultra cautious, and frankly, I think they still see us, like it or not, they see us as a political liability. And, unfortunately, we're also a political liability that has votes that they need. I wasn't impressed they seem to be playing it very, very close to the vest. Like I said, it's not surprising, but it was disappointing. We can't expect miracles here. I mean, this is a tough election year. There's political realities here in terms of Congress and in terms of what's going on. That we can't expect miracles here. And I think we got exactly what we probably should have expected. So I think there's hope for real inclusion here. I think that there's hope for recognition. I think there's hope for being acknowledged as a valid minority constituency. That I do believe that there's hope for. Because just the fact that we've gotten to the point where they feel that our inclusion is important enough that we have to be included or it would look bad says something. So you got to start somewhere. And yeah, we're just barely hovering off ground level, but at least we're off the ground. And really, what difference does it make? Why not go for the whole shebang and support civil rights for everyone, and make that statement that says we believe that civil rights are the rights of every American citizen. Make that blanket statement. Wouldn't that have a much greater appeal to the people you're trying to reach than saying we're afraid of the people who are going to call us bad names? This was the first time as far as we know, in American political history that the campaign of a major presidential candidate has met with representatives of the transgender community, and that is key. We thought they could have been a little more forthcoming, but you know what? No one says they could have just continued ignoring us, as both parties have throughout political history. They didn't do that. They came to us, and for that, I give them full credit. So
I tend to be a little more optimistic than some people, and maybe a little naive. But I think the fact that they even were willing to meet with us is a huge step forward. We probably won't get everything that we want, of course. I mean, that's just not the way it works. It's politics. I didn't have really huge expectations, so I feel satisfied. For now.
The only thing that frankly does bother me, that they are a little conservative. Without a doubt, I was a little disappointed in a sense. I had a little more optimism, but on the other hand, based upon my limited contact with some of the direct people from the Kerry campaign, which was frankly limited, I'm not surprised.
I think they've got to be Democrats and stand up for what Democrats believe in.
Yep, it's day 2 and we're looking for another productive day. Yesterday actually went quite well. We got a number of people, especially on the Senate side, that said that they would contact Senator Kennedy and contact some of the other individuals in Congress to try and get them to come over to the inclusive language that will include transgenders. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they'll have some success. We put in a lot of miles, and I think a lot of folks have really been impressed with this. We've got a lot of first-timers this time, and that's what this is about. It's about getting people out and getting people active in the process. I just hope we can get more and more people to understand the need that's here, especially with regards to employment and the hate crimes bill. This is the citizens' process to be able to affect change in Congress. Unfortunately, the opposition to our issues and our community, they're well organized and they get their people out. So we have to make that stand. We have to show the face, and we have to, at least figuratively, fly the transgender flag. And these are regular, everyday issues. These are life and death issues for us.
On August 12, 2002, my daughter Stephanie Thomas was murdered. Stephanie was transgendered. Her birth name was Wilbur Thomas. Stephanie, at the age of 14, decided to come out and be who she was, and that was a girl. She always wanted to be a girl, and she was a beautiful one inside and out. On August 12th, I got a knock on my door from a friend of Stephanie's mom and two detectives. When I looked through the peephole and saw that there was Janice's mom and the two detectives, I just had a real terrible feeling, a gut feeling in my stomach that something was very, very wrong. I didn't even want to let them into my home. But finally she convinced me to open the door, and I did. And that's when they told me that my baby had been shot. I asked the detective, was he alive? And he told me no, that he was dead. And I can't explain in words, because words will never explain when a mother's told that her child's been murdered. And I wouldn't want any mother to have to go through what I went through that morning. When I went to the crime scene, I found that there was no tape around the scene. People were going about their busy morning. The ground still had Stephanie's blood covered on the ground, or either Dion's blood. And I was appalled at that, and I had the detectives, or I told someone to call the fire department, and they did, and the fire department came out and cleaned the blood off the street. Dion Davis, known as Yakia, was also murdered along with my daughter Stephanie. Same brutal way. They were shot 9 to 10 times. From the very beginning I was afraid, but I had to be supportive. I was very afraid for her because I know the hate in the world. They do know who the suspect is, who they suspect for this crime, but nothing has came out of it yet. Also, I'm here today to encourage mothers to come out for their transgender children, to let the world know that they're out here and they are in danger. They're in danger because of the hate against the transgender the last year. I think it's been at least 8 or 9 in Washington, D.C. alone that have been murdered and left discarded as nothing. Stephanie's always been feminine. She's always wanted to be a girl. This is nothing new. And for a lot of parents, they see it in their children. You try to ignore it because you don't want it to be, because you know the world's full of hate. I mean, hate is here, but they come to grips with it. They come to understand it. But I don't want them to wait as long as it did for them to understand transgender. They need to come to grips with it now. These people are here, and they should support them by any means necessary. Transgender is not something they made up. This is not a choice. They decided, I want to be transgender today. I want to dress up in girls' clothes. This is something that happened at a very long time ago when they were born. Because how can you change anything for the kids if you don't listen to them? And I listened to Stephanie, his friends that had parents to talk to. They're the most loneliest people in the world, transgender kids. They have no one who accepts them. They think it's a joke. They think they're funny. Oh, you're dressed up like a girl. You're this, you're that. It's really sad.
We're going to the Human Rights Campaign's offices off DuPont Circle to talk with them about why they haven't included transgender individuals in INDA or LLEA for over a decade. You know, they've continually pushed our issues to the side.
The Local Law Enforcement Enhancement Act, Hate Crimes Prevention Act, we've been excluded from, as Gwen said, for the last 10 years, as well as ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. And we really, they've actually said that we're included, or that they support us being included, yet every time the bill comes up, the language isn't there, and they support non-inclusive language.
HRC, where's the T? HRC, where are we? HRC, where's the T? HRC, where are we? HRC, where's the T? HRC.
These T's are not silent.
These T's are not silent. These T's are not silent. These T's are not silent. These T's are not silent. These T's are not silent. These T's are not silent. These T's are not silent. These T's are not
We wanted to ask if you guys would like to come in and talk to a member of our staff. You're part of our family. We want you to come in. We've got some folks scrambling around on the floors to see if Liz is here, and a member of our political lobbying team.
I'm the Deputy Political Director here at HRC. I've been here for 5 years. And this is Chris Labonte, our Legislative Director, and Jay Smith, our Communications Manager. And I know you guys were outside the building, and thank you for coming in.
Why we're really out there walking around, let me explain that first of all, is because HRC has been supporting non-inclusive language to both the LLEA Hate Crimes Prevention Act and ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. And I am a transsexual man. I've been out of work since I started my transition. I'm also a hate crime survivor. My aunt was a transsexual woman who was murdered in the state of Massachusetts in 1995. That's where I'm from.
When an INDA goes out there and it's not trans-inclusive, and HRC doesn't make a public statement of any nature to say that no, we want it to be inclusive, or an LLEA goes out and it's got language that may or may not cover, likely will not cover, a lot of the cases like what we've seen. And HRC doesn't really seem to push on that, but is more interested on getting that INDA through or that LLEA through now, and just going for that and leaving us behind.
One of the things that we've been doing, for example, is asking our lead co-sponsors, and we did a series of meetings with Lisa Motte probably about a year ago, to have as part of the legislative history information on the transgender community, so then when it's gone back to be interpreted, that would be more certain that language would cover people in the transgender community.
I'm the transgender rights attorney at the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, which is a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights organization that's been around since 1973. When the gay community says, as a collective whole, that they care about transgender rights, then it's possible to pass a transgender inclusive bill. But if the gay community says, oh, we don't really care, it's okay to pass the bill without transgender people in it, then that's what's going to be passing. So that's what we have here in Washington, D.C. right now, is some of the gay rights organizations still support the bill even though it doesn't cover transgender people, which means that Congress then feels perfectly comfortable working on the bill that doesn't include transgender people, and that's where we're at right now. We really need to get all lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights organizations to only accept a transgender inclusive bill, and at that point, Congress would respond to what we want. But until we get there, it's going to be really, 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 really difficult.
That would be more certain that language would cover people in the transgender community.
We
So
actually
that is one of the
started
things
the
we're trying to
Legislative
do.
History Project way back in the 107th Congress.
Okay,
It's like
so it was more
2
than,
years ago.
More than 2 years ago.
Well, will you still support non-inclusive legislation as it?
I can't answer you yet, and that's only because we don't know yet. That decision hasn't been made. Where we are right now with that is, frankly, that's a decision that's going to be made by our board of directors. That's a board-level decision, and that's something that we are grappling with as an organization. We're having internal and external conversations about that. As I said, Cheryl met with leaders of the transgender community 2 weeks ago, talked about this very question. I think prior to that point, if I can back up again, I think prior to that point, we were at a point where we said, this is what the Human Rights Campaign will ask for. Then we were rebuffed by the lead co-sponsors on the Hill. I mean, obviously, given your experience and process, that we don't actually introduce the legislation. It's the members of Congress themselves. And then what we were doing was we were moving forward on, okay, if ENDA comes back non-inclusive, we're going to draft with the transgender community a second bill that we can then go and educate and advocate on. That process has not continued at this point, I think largely because strategic decisions have been made that would probably not be the best way to go. So what we're back to now is, what do we support in the next Congress?
The Employment Non-Discrimination Act, it is sitting in committee in the Senate and sitting in committee in the House, and it's going nowhere. It's going nowhere because the people who are in control of Congress and control what comes up for a vote aren't interested in passing that bill, so it's going to sit in committee until the leadership of either the House or the Senate changes its mind and they want it to pass, or we get new leadership through electing new people to office. We should really change the Employment Non-Discrimination Act right now while it's not moving, so that we can educate on it and get people, get all of the co-sponsors who are currently co-sponsoring the bill educated about transgender issues and supportive of transgender people and anti-discrimination rights. We expect when they're educated that they will be supportive, but without that language in the bill, it's really hard to do education on these issues.
Are you guys familiar with the position of the Human Rights Campaign vis-a-vis the Employment Non-Discrimination Act and the shift that we made at the beginning of this Congress, formally requesting of the lead co-sponsors that the Employment Non-Discrimination Act be inclusive, be written in a trans-inclusive?
It surprises me that we're still,
Right.
that there's still a need to debate this.
Right.
That, to me, after all this time, this should be a non-issue.
Right.
We shouldn't have to have discussions about whether or not, it should be there already. Well, I, of course, certainly really desire and hope that the decision is a positive one.
Right.
Again, after a decade, come on, we've gone through a number of Congresses here.
We live in the community and we watch people lose their jobs, lose their homes, go out, end up out on the street, and ultimately end up being murdered.
Between the Matthew Shepard case and all the coverage that got, which deservedly so,
oh yes,
and the coverage that the Billy Jack Gavier case got, deservedly so, there were 6 murder cases between there of transgendered women, and there was no HRC press release. There was none of this. When Guinarajo was murdered, there has been no outcry that has been seen publicly from HRC.
Well, imagine how the law enforcement community views this when we're not even included in legislation and backed up by the biggest organizations.
To watch a lawyer stand up there and say, even though our clients discussed whether or not Guinarajo was a transsexual in August and she was murdered in October, that somehow that night they didn't know that she was transsexual and freaked out. And in his defense was using the trans panic defense, that he didn't know that she was transgendered, even though there was testimony that said that that he was heard to say to her that night, "You're the best looking pre-op transsexual I've ever seen."
Us being the most visible, we're not going to be the ones that carry the weight up of this when the backlash occurs.
3 friends of mine,
right,
have been killed. When you start dealing with that, it becomes very personal.
I can't even begin to understand that because it's something that I haven't gone through. We as an organization do have an open door. I think that Cheryl Jakes, our president, has an open door, and I would say that honestly, and I think everyone at this table would agree, that this is a decision this organization is grappling with. This organization, this movement, our leadership is grappling with, and I would ask that we continue to have conversations like this. Call us up on the telephone, email us, come into the offices, invite us to your lobby visits, all of that. I think we are very welcome and opening to that, rather than having a protest on the sidewalk. I think that you would have gotten probably even more staff here to a meeting had you called and asked for a meeting in advance, all of that. So
some of us do
that's
protest
something
on
I would
sidewalks.
request.
Some of us come in lobby. Some of us do both.
Right.
Every path needs to be followed.
No, they really do support us, and they're really working for us, and you really didn't have to show up out in front of our building and protest.
The other night when Lisa told me when I said I wanted a meeting with Cheryl Jakes, want $5 million too?
One thing that I did note was they discussed the fact that this summer, probably at their board retreat, they're going to be discussing yet again on inclusion in INDA.
Whether or not that they'll support a non-inclusive legislation.
Which pretty much tells you that they're still where they were in '94. But that's why it's important to agitate these people.
There is resistance to having gender identity or expression be added to the bill, absolutely. it's very, very frustrating to be trying to change this bill right now. Ever since it was drafted in 1994, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act has only covered sexual orientation, and my organization feels so strongly about that the bill is inadequate that we haven't supported it. We don't endorse it, even though we're what people say is a gay rights organization, and that's a gay rights bill. We don't endorse this bill because we are committed to transgender inclusion, and since it doesn't cover transgender people right now, we don't endorse the bill at all. It seems that the lead sponsors, they're pretty clear with us that they think that it will hurt the chances of the bill to include gender identity expression. We actually disagree. So we have different political calculus. We find that people who are for anti-discrimination rights for lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, which the bill currently covers, are the same people who are for anti-discrimination rights for transgender people. Rarely does a representative or a senator distinguish between the two groups of people. Quite frankly, they often think that we are the same. They can't even tell the difference between a transgender person and a gay person. Essentially, nobody is making civil rights gains right now. Everyone is trying to hold on to the existing civil rights laws we have in this country and to stop the erosion that's happening in the courts and in the legislature. The Employment Non-Discrimination Act has actually stayed relatively the same since it was introduced in 1994. It only covers employment and it only covers sexual orientation. That's been the definitive features of this bill. Before 1994, there were other versions that included non-discrimination protections in public accommodations like hotels and restaurants, things like that, housing, etc. But in 1994, the decision was to make the bill as narrow as possible so that it would have its greatest chance of passing, because there would be less reasons to oppose it. That, of course, that was in 1994. They thought that the bill was going to pass immediately because they had made it smaller. Well, it turns out that the problem with the bill wasn't that it also covered housing and public accommodations as well as employment. The problem with the bill is that there are gay people covered by it, and that part has prevented the bill from passing for 10 years or 25 years, depending on how you're looking at it, and that's going to continue to prevent the bill from passing. The leadership of the Congress does not believe that gay people should have equal rights. They don't believe that transgender people should have equal rights in this country, and that bill's going to sit there until the leadership changes their mind, or we actually change the leadership so that there's no different people in control of Congress. Most people believe that if the leadership brought it to a vote in the Senate, that it would pass in its current form. We also think that if it was brought to a vote with it being expanded to have gender identity expression in it, that it would also pass.
Hello, my name is Monica Helms. I'm the president of the Transgender American Veterans Association. And we felt that it was very important to bring our people here. Many of them have not had a chance to come. Many of them have tried to come on several times and could not get close to the wall. And now that they're here with their brothers and sisters, they can face this wall and finally heal from their pain that they had suffered from this war and any other war.
I know I have about 10 men on this wall. I used to be a drill sergeant in the United States Army for 7 years. I got out as a E7 during the Vietnam era. Every time I come here, it makes me understand a little bit more about why I did what I did. I really didn't want to go to Vietnam. And the only people at that time that couldn't go to Vietnam were the people that trained people to go to Vietnam, so I became one of those people.
Roughly within 6 months when I graduated from high school, I was in Vietnam. And I was assigned to a transportation unit, 39th Transportation Battalion, as part of the 101st Airborne. I was on Camp Eagle for 6 months. And then I went up to Firebase for a couple of months when we went into layouts with the Harvin units.
The Constellation is an aircraft carrier, and I was in charge of maintenance shop for the intelligence center. So we had all kinds of information coming in from the ground troops, and we coordinated that with the airstrikes from the aircraft carrier.
I was in during the Vietnam War, 1970 to 1978, but I did not serve in Vietnam. I was in the Navy, served on submarines.
I went to follow friends of mine that went the year before me, and some of them died, and I felt compelled at that time to support my friends and to join. I did it of my own free will, and I actually missed going to Vietnam just by a hair's breadth. I was in basic training at the time the war was ending, so I've carried a lot of guilt over that through my lifetime. I wanted to be a part of my friends and support them, and so I thought I was doing my part, and I came here today to the wall to honor my friends that died and to sort of appease my guilt for not being able to be a part of that. I know it sounds weird, but I feel bad that I couldn't be there, and I wanted to be there with my friends because I knew they were dying, and I didn't want my friends and people I knew to die alone.
I don't see anybody from my time period when I was in the military. I only kept in touch with a very few people to begin with, and one person that I was closest with, he totally rejected me when I started trying to transition, and I felt very sad about that. Him and I were close because we worked on the ship's newspaper together. So I'm very sad about losing him as a friend. But I have made many, many other friends, and I've met at least 20 or so other transsexual submariners in the last 7 years.
The whole year I was over there, it was just nobody wanted to get close. Nobody really wanted to know anybody. It was all the single person rotation, and it was just so chaotic, and there was a whole list of the people that got killed in fire. There was a fire base just south of the fire base I was on called Mary Ann that got completely overran. As a battalion mail clerk, part of my job was we had 7 companies and 2 marine companies attached to us, and any of the truck drivers that got killed, I had to pack their personal belongings, and I was a very busy person.
Now I come back to this wall and I bring the graduation books of the people that I trained from basic training. And there's a lot of people on this wall that were in those classes that I taught. And I can't help but feel as though in some way I failed them. When I come back here, I make the promise that I'll always remember them. They'll always be remembered at least as long as I live. The day that they took the last person off the roof of Saigon Hotel, I said, the mission's over. I'm out of here.
After Vietnam, I came back to the States, and I went ahead and finished out my Navy career, retired in 1987, and then after that I got divorced. I was married for 22 years, and upon the divorce I felt a great need to go see a psychologist, so I did that, and I was diagnosed as being a transsexual. And in 1989 I started my transition. Started living full-time as a woman, and I have never looked back. It's I feel so much better now, at peace with myself, and because this is the true me.
Although being transgender is not the same as being gay or lesbian, the rules that don't ask, don't tell, rules that apply in the U.S. military to gays and lesbians also apply to the transgendered. I know several young people who were serving well, nuclear submarines, nuclear aircraft carriers, and when it was discovered that they were transgendered, they were released from the service. At the very least, they got honorable discharges. But these were people who were looking to stay in the service and contribute to our country, and now they have to find other ways to do that.
Sadly, when I started my transition, I had to leave the group because other veterans couldn't deal with me. Friends that I had for decades turned on me. Doctors, Dr. Jonathan Shea was phenomenal in helping me when I decided to transition. But part of the problem is with the Veterans Administration, every region across the country, they have different policies. You can go to some VA hospitals and they'll totally treat transgender veterans with hormones and mental health wise, and other VA hospitals won't offer any kind of treatment. It's totally left up to each region how they interpret it into veterans benefit package. In my life, being transgendered was such a key factor. I did it so long, I was in the closet for so many years, depressed, suicidal, and through the Army, got married, did everything I could to try to be what everybody thought I should be.
I started revealing my gender issues to a base psychiatrist, and next thing you know, I'm on an airplane. And after serving for 3 years and doing my job, all of a sudden I wasn't any good anymore. I didn't deserve to be there, and I was completely rejected. And as a transsexual person, that's the pattern of your life.
I remember praying to God when I was a little child to turn me into a girl, but that never happened. And then I didn't pursue it as much as a lot of others. I didn't think about it as much. When I got into the Navy, there was a point when I was on the first submarine where we had a lot of time off, and we were given a lot of free time, and that was when I started experimenting cross-dressing, and it felt very good, but I couldn't understand what was going on. This was like in the middle 1970s, and there was not a lot of information around to be able to clarify what my situation was. And so now, it took me many years after I got out of the military to realize what my status in life was, and that's when I started making the change.
Sure, among us we have heroes, heroines. We have a lot of people who were very proud to serve and would have loved to serve again if we'd be allowed.
Currently, I'm Vice President of the Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 905 in Porter County, Indiana, and hope to be the next Region Vice President for the state of Indiana. My friends at Chapter 905 know about this transition, and they are comfortable with it. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been elected Vice President. They have no problems with me at all, and they treat me just as a regular woman, which is really great. Treated with nothing but respect, and I surely can't ask for anything more.
This was a gathering of people to heal and to remember, but I think that we made a statement. After we laid the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and after our eyes were dry a little bit, I turned to Monica Helms, the president of TAVA, and said, Monica, they can't take this away from us. No matter what, they cannot take this moment in time away from us. I'm very proud of every one of my brothers and sisters who was here today. I'm very, very proud of every one of my brothers and sisters who served and who gave the final sacrifice, and we wanted to honor them. I think we did a good job of it.
Well, all in all, I actually feel we had a pretty groundbreaking week. We're here at Arlington Cemetery, and we just finished with the first wreath laying for the Transgendered American Veterans Association. And to me, that in and of itself was historic enough. Of course, we still face the typical opposition. Obviously, being from Texas, I tend to be a little more what I call realistic. Others might call it pessimistic. We made a few strides. We made some gains, but then again, we also gleaned some information that we're still a long ways off. Some of the stuff that we learned about who our actual gatekeepers are in Congress as far as the legislation, That was a bit enlightening and a bit disappointing, actually. It's up to the gatekeepers. It's up to the folks on Capitol Hill, the primary gatekeepers, as well as the other gatekeepers we might find popping up along the road in the organizations. Hopefully we'll get there, and hopefully we'll all be on the same page very soon. But again, those are hopes. I'm very much a pragmatist, and I'm realistic about it. I can't say that it's going to happen tomorrow. And chances are there's going to be a lot more heartbreak along the road. But all we can do is just take that deep breath and resign ourselves to the task ahead. We've got to be resolute, and we've got to forge ahead. There's no other way out. It's either that or give up, and giving up is basically death.